This week's episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! Is sponsored by Found Penny Studio. Found Penny Studio is exclusively fulfilling our Patreon Tier 3 merchandise perk by doing what they do best, creating to celebrate everyday moments like your favorite TV series. Check out Found Penny Studio's creations at foundpennystudio.com and find Couch Potatoes Unite on Patreon at www.patreon.com/couchpotatoesunite. This episode was also sponsored by Westside GR Deals. Do you love a good deal? Westside GR Deals sells items at least half off retail prices from big box stores like Home Depot, Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, and Amazon. The items consist of brand new furniture, tools, or even clothing. There are even ways to win free items or earn extra savings by helping to grow the group. And there's a mystery box winner each month. There's also a 100% money-back guarantee if a product needs to be returned for any reason. Join the Westside GR Deals group on Facebook if you live in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area and love a good deal.
You say you want to watch a drama. You say you want to watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama. Or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler. So you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch Potatoes Unite. Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite. Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because several generations of a family can share a name. Right? I mean, it's that simple, right? My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays. And as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Amazon Music, basically wherever you get your podcasts, to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Stranger Things, iZombie, The Good Place, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, Mr. Robot, Charmed, and Riverdale, plus new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Altered Carbon, Doctor Who, Westworld, Fuller House, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, 13 Reasons Why, Will and Grace, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The 100, The Crown, Supernatural, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. The Outlander panel will digest Season 4 of the sweeping romantic epic. We'll be launching new panels covering The Orville, Big Little Lies, The Good Doctor, Call the Midwife, The Animaniacs, Killing Eve, and Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll thank the Golden Girls for being friends. We'll cry bazinga for Big Bang Theory, and we'll dive deep into the fantasy world of the magicians. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these semi-quarantine times. So make sure you follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or on Google Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Plus, brand new for 2021, you can subscribe to us via Patreon. And in an effort to get fancier, to upgrade some of our stuff, to build some capacity, Couch Potatoes Unite is on Patreon to provide the opportunity to subscribe for perks, including member-exclusive email and Discord access, bonus content, TV-themed merch, and the ability to join CPU for occasional watch parties, and in so doing, possibly to place priority requests for shows that we cover. If any of this sounds like fun to you, head on over to Patreon or download the app and search for our name, Couch Potatoes Unite. Don't forget the ! In the meantime, if you don't hear a show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback. Just remember, this is us. Yep, that's the joke. Oh, and be nice. See, this is a drama And the jokes are hard to find, okay? Anyway, I will go on. Today, we're around the water cooler and continuing a catch-up series recently launched here at the CPU water cooler, in which we discuss a hit multi-season romantic family drama that airs on NBC. The show is This Is Us. This is the third of a 4-part series in which CPU catches up on this show. In this episode, part 3 of this series, we're discussing season 3, which aired on NBC from September 25th, 2018 to April 2nd, 2019, with a total of 18 episodes. We will discuss the 4th season in the last episode of our catch-up series. Created by Dan Fogelman, the series follows the lives and families of 2 parents and their 3 children in several different time frames. The show's ensemble cast features Milo Ventimiglia, Mandy Moore, Sterling K. Brown, Chrissy Metz, Justin Hartley, Susan Kelechi Watson, Chris Sullivan, Ron Cephas Jones, John Huertas, Eris Baker, and Faith Herman. The series follows the lives of siblings Kevin, played by Hartley, Kate, played by Metz, and Randall, played by Brown, known as the Big Three, and their parents Jack, played by Ventimiglia, and Rebecca Pearson, played by Moore. It takes place mainly in the present and uses flashbacks to show the family's past. Kevin and Kate are the 2 surviving members from a triplet pregnancy, born 6 weeks premature on Jack's 36th birthday in 1980. Their brother, to be named Kyle, is stillborn. Believing they were meant to have 3 children, Jack and Rebecca, who are white, decide to adopt Randall, an African-American child born the same day and brought to the same hospital after his biological father, William Hill, played by Jones, abandoned him at a fire station. Randall becomes a successful finance professional and marries college classmate Beth, played by Watson. Kevin becomes a successful actor while struggling to be taken seriously. And after lacking direction much of her life, Kate meets Toby, played by Sullivan, in a weight loss support group. Most episodes feature a storyline taking place in the present, contemporaneous to the time of airing, and a storyline taking place at a set time in the past. But some episodes are set in one time period or use multiple flashback time periods. Flashbacks often focus on Jack and Rebecca circa 1980, both before and after their baby's birth, or on the family when the Big Three are children or adolescents, and played by 2 sets of younger actors. These scenes usually take place in Pittsburgh, where the Big Three and their parents are born and raised. As adults, Kate lives in Los Angeles, Randall and his family are in New Jersey, and Kevin relocates from Los Angeles to New York City and back again. Various other time periods and locations have also served as settings, and some episodes have focused on the earlier experiences of other characters, including Randall's family members. Beginning in the 2nd season, the show also uses flash forwards to show a later time period when Randall's daughter Tess is an adult and an elderly Rebecca is, spoiler, on her deathbed. This Is Us was popularly requested for discussion and beloved by some of our resident couch potatoes, all of whom appear on this panel. In fact, panelists Kristen L., Spencer, Emily, Eddie, Kristen T., and Jared returned to their respective seats around the water cooler today to resume talk of this intricate family drama with the kind of enthusiasm and cheer of Big Three can infuse into the proceedings. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have watched all episodes of the series through at least season 3 and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched This Is Us and plan to do so at some point, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel. How are you?
Hey, Kylie.
Hi, Kylie.
Hi, are you ready to talk about season 3 in our catching up series?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I am.
Awesome. Well, of course, I have to take a moment to take your temperature along the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do. And I haven't really tweaked the season 3 one that much, but we've created a tradition. We've checked your temperature in the 2nd season. We're going to keep checking your temperature as long as we cover each season individually. Today is no exception, and as a result, the character question goes like this. Do you love this show? It's got the big 3 things you love about your TV dramas: heart, soul, and a heaping dose of family dysfunction. Still, you wouldn't have it any other way. You love all of the characters very much and hope that whatever might have happened in the past, their presents and futures are happy, like Jack Pearson. Do you care about this show deeply? It's messy and complicated, but you're willing to navigate perceived pitfalls in the premise because it is one of the most well-intentioned television dramas that you have watched in recent years. Plus, it occasionally features the singing of Mandy Moore, like Rebecca Pearson. What you enjoy most about the show is its ability to seamlessly weave through time periods, highlighting different eras of the Pearson family at seemingly disconnected moments, like young Kevin, Kate, and Randall Pearson. Do you enjoy this show well enough you might actually be addicted to it when all is said and done? You see it as both healthy and cathartic when it actually acknowledges that even the most seemingly perfect existence or sense of happiness can be negatively influenced by unseen forces, such as genetic predispositions or strings of bad luck circumstances, like Kevin Pearson. Did you start watching in season 2, and even though you felt at a disadvantage coming from behind and in the wake of what is considered to be a stellar first season, you've grown to love this family as much as anyone who has watched it from the beginning, like Miguel Rivas? Do you believe that the show is quite flawed in some aspects, but in others it excels? For example, you're surprised and gratified by the way it highlights race and privilege within the dynamic of one family, which is something new and fresh for the TV landscape, at least after some years. You're also particularly moved by Randall's quest to fuse his biological history with his evolution as a black individual adopted by a white family, and by how each experience both propels and opposes the other, creating strengths and learning opportunities for the character, like Randall Pearson. Are there parts of this series that you really love, such as the comic relief provided by the Toby character, and parts of this show that you really do not like, such as when the show is saddest, discussing Jack's death, for example? In fact, you wish the series would lose some of the dead weight, at least where it makes the most sense to do so, like Kate Pearson. You don't understand what's going on most of the time, but you still love the family of the show's heart and how it involves the younger generations in the story, present and future, like Annie and Tess Pearson. Do you understand what's going on most of the time, but don't understand why the adult characters don't realize how good they have it sometimes, which makes the discussion around privilege all the more timely and equally frustrating. Also, the through line of dad jokes is so lame, though admittedly a comforting guilty pleasure, like Deja Pearson. Do you think that the show is okay, though you wish it had more comedy and less drama? Still, there are parts that keep you coming back, like the sincere love between two people of a certain weight class, which often does not get depicted on television for anything other than laughs, like Toby Damon. Did you start watching at the end of season 2 and for most of season 3, but became frustrated by the poor choices of some of its more misguided characters, no matter how much you might have been rooting for them, and so you broke off your viewing quickly, preferring to keep it at a healthy distance, like Zoe Baker? Or you are wary of the show and some of its problematic characters. Oh sure, some of them have heart, but some of them can almost be dangerous, and while that is true to life of people or humanity, it's also not something you'd readily choose to watch over the other TV offerings available, no matter what kind of ratings or polls this series gets. In fact, you like to be able to pursue your own TV watching dreams rather than fall in with the crowd of people who love this show. It's not all that in the end, and you're going to watch what you want to watch. Like Beth Pearson. I doubt that anybody on this panel will answer in like the last quarter of that, but with all that said, who would like to start?
This is Eddie. Hi, guys.
Hi, Eddie!
I'm sticking true. I'm Jack.
That's what you were last time.
No change for me.
Why Jack? Just expound a little for now. Just tease the people.
It's consistent. What the show's good at doing, it's just consistent. And Jack is probably one of my favorite characters, if not the most favorite. So that's why I always choose Jack, because he is one of my favorite characters and the show's just consistent. So every season I fall in love with it even more.
All right. Welcome back, Eddie.
This is Emily.
Hi, Emily.
I, too, am going to stay pretty consistent. I definitely fit into the young Kevin, Kate, and Randall again. I think the show's ability to just weave through the time periods is mind-blowingly incredible. It's just beautiful. I think season 3 was one of my favorite seasons. And then I also have to throw in a little bit of Kevin, because, I'm kind of addicted to the show. And I think that it's really cool that it's not the whole family isn't perfect, and that they all have their own flaws, and they've worked through some of them, and others are just developing. So that's where I'm at.
So you're not Jack anymore, but you're Kevin and the young kids?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm not Jack, because I do love all of those things, but I feel like the other two kind of encompass all of it a little bit better.
You don't want to throw Rebecca in too, because that's like the first 4.
I know.
You don't want to hear Mandy Moore singing or something?
I do love I do love Rebecca. I always have loved her. I love Mandy Moore. I've been a huge fan of hers for a long time. But yeah, I'm trying to be concise.
Okay, I'm just teasing you because you're jumping around that top tier. So, all right, welcome back, Emily.
Thanks.
I gotta stay consistent just because I continue to love it. So I am Jack. I mean, there's certainly a tendency to want to try to wiggle your way around here and say that there's definitely a lot of pieces of each of them that probably can fit in to me. But in terms of the show, the consistency, the love for it, it stays top notch. I'm definitely addicted, but I want to be like Jack. I want to be like that dad, that father, that person that loves his family and stays true to kind of who he is throughout all of it.
And what is your real name?
My real name is Jared. That's me, Jared. Jared.
Got it. Welcome, Jared, and thank you for coming back.
Glad to be here.
All right, this is Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
And hey, how are you doing?
I'm all right.
I am definitely still Jack and the young big three of Kevin, Kate, and Randall. Maybe with a little sprinkling of older Kevin because, yeah, I can't wait for this show every week. We watch it live most weeks. And, with many, many TV shows, after a couple of seasons, you start finding weaknesses. This show just keeps getting stronger and stronger.
Wow. And if you follow Spencer on other panels, he doesn't always think that.
Amen.
Welcome back, Spencer.
Thank you.
I can go.
So you have to give the disclaimer then.
Oh, I get to give the disclaimer. That's usually your job.
No, it's yours.
All right, then.
And it's already starting.
This is Kristen T.
Hi, Kristen T.
I think the disclaimer... Wait. Okay. Sorry, Kylie.
It's okay. I said hi.
Oh, hi. So I think the disclaimer is that I am married to Spencer T. So
that is
our opinions, we might refer to each other, etc., etc.
And you might fight over who gives the disclaimer, that sort of thing.
Please.
Yeah.
That did happen tonight.
I like to claim that I have the best Kristen in the podcast universe.
Stop it. You did that intentionally.
That's how it works. Anyway, Kristen T, you were saying.
Yes, so at the risk of sounding repetitive, I have to say that I am still Jack and the three young Pearsons. I will add a slight hint of the beginning of the Rebecca description because it says you care about this show deeply, and I really do care about these characters. I think about them a lot, even when I'm not watching the show, for a few days after an episode, and then for a few days before the next one. But I do really love it, and I am constantly surprised and amazed by the way that the time periods are woven together and the depth on all levels, performance, writing, storytelling, all of it. It's just, I don't know that there's much better on TV.
All right. Welcome back, Kristen T.
That leaves me. I'm Kristen L.
Hi, Kristen L.
Otherwise, I'm Kristen on all other podcasts that I'm not on with Kristen T.
And apparently not Spencer's favorite Kristen.
No, and that's okay, because we usually get a little spicy with each other.
I believe that was the hashtag Kristen disclaimer.
A little spicy.
So pretty much, I'm sticking true to what I was last time. I'm still Jack and the three younger big three. It's like Eddie said at the outset, it's consistent. It's still just as exciting to watch in season 3 as it was in season 1. The storytelling is still there. You can tell that they've mapped out exactly where they want to take this story from beginning to end. So it's consistent. It's emotional the whole way through. Nothing feels cliche or overdone. I still can't get over how well they weave the 3 or 4 different time periods together. That's always been a huge selling point for me, and it's still strong 3 seasons in.
All right. Welcome back, Kristen L.
Thanks.
And of course, my name is Kylie. I moderate as well as participate on this panel, as is most frequently the case about 95% of the time. Last time I was Jack. This time I am Jack. I don't see any reason to change. I love this show. I am now 3 seasons in, and I can honestly say I love it. I look forward to watching it. I can't wait. I have not watched into season 4. If you've been following our catch-up series, you know that I watch a lot of TV, so I watch as far as I need to be for our next episode. And But I can't wait. I can't wait to watch season 4, and I can't wait to watch what comes afterwards. It's a very, very good show. I'm invested in these characters. I just want to keep watching and learning and crying. Apparently, there's a lot of crying for me, but despite all of the crying, I'm still Jack, because I think it's just a well thought out, genuine show with a lot of good storytelling and character progression and development. So this is probably going to sound a little repetitive in our catching up series, but nevertheless, a lot of stuff happens in season 3. So many things, really. I don't know if you want me to toss out a few highlights first and then you kind of jump in, or if you want to jump in. The general question, of course, is what did you like and what didn't you like about season 3, if anything? I don't know if anybody's got an answer for that second part. But then there's so much that was covered in season 3. I'll make sure that we hit on all the characters if you don't want me to summarize up front.
I think for me, the fact that this show, 3 seasons in, is still catching me off guard and hitting me with surprises. I'm so used to, over my many years on the planet, watching TV and starting to predict the deeper you get into a show, being able to predict what's coming, what happens. And this show does not allow for that. They just catch you off guard time and time again, and it is so refreshing.
It's just incredible. It's just one of the best storytelling. It's just the best example of storytelling. Sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. It's just such a good example of storytelling. And like Spencer said, I tend to find myself trying to predict things as well, and this is a show you can't. They keep you on the edge of your seat the whole time, and you think it's going to go one way, and then it goes a completely different way, and it's not in a bad sense at all.
Yeah, Kristen and I send each other emails while we're at work and thinking about it, usually on the Wednesday following watching the live one the night before, with predictions. And, we're current with what's going on, so we've already made predictions for tomorrow night's episode. We've yet to be right. 3 seasons, well, we're on, obviously the current season, so all these seasons in, and they managed to completely stay away from anything that would be predictable, but without becoming some sort of cliche or becoming too out there. I mean, they're just brilliant.
Every so often, Spencer will even say something along the lines of, oh, that's a recognizable actor, so they must be playing a bigger part in the story. And then sometimes they don't. Because just being a part of this show, even for one episode, I think as a performer would be a really cool experience. And also, like Spencer said, they just keep you guessing, and I love that. It keeps you so interested.
What I like about this show so far is that characters that I don't like in some seasons, the next season I'm finding myself that I'm finally falling in love with that character, and that happened this season. Kate's always been one of the weakest characters for me if I've had to pick one. I fell in love with her character a lot this season with what she had to deal with and how she dealt with it, and how, again, like the show doesn't do, it didn't play off into a cliche with what she had to deal with, which I'm sure we'll talk about and dive into.
I think Kate, for me, is the roller coaster character. I go from loving her to hating her and back again. Yep. There are times where she kind of fades into the background and I'm completely disinterested in her, and then suddenly there's something that she does that's so real and raw and just brings you right back into her.
I want to say it was Kristen T who I'm actually all caught up now, but the first season that we recorded, I did not like Kevin either. Again, I was told I would, and I'm starting to fall in love. This season's where I started to fall in love with his character, and he hasn't been a very well-rounded circle character, and this season is the season that we found out why he hasn't been, without going on, but we find out in the season why he wasn't a well-rounded character, and he's even becoming well-rounded.
I agree, Eddie, and I also think this is the season where we first start to see how much of Jack is really in Kevin.
And he actually accepts it. He's never accepted it before, that he's like his father, because he felt like he was a failure because he wasn't there and he could have done something. But he finally accepts that he is his father, and he has that charm of his father.
I think this is my favorite Kevin season so far. I love him later on too, but we're not talking about that yet. But season 3, I love Kevin because you finally start to fill in some of those gaps that we've been missing, and like you said, Eddie, like kind of rounding him out as a character. And I think you're right that we do start to see some of these like glimpses of Jack in him, but what I like is that his glimpses of Jack are like his own reflections of what he saw in Jack. They're not directly Jack like the writers could have easily written off and done. It's like we're seeing his version of Jack, and I love it.
And I was just going to say that I love how normal it is. Like the way that they do it, it just feels so normal. I never expected that each of the characters were going to kind of click with me from the beginning. I expected that as you go from season to season, which is the case for a lot of shows that I watch, there's just this building of the story. There's these moments where you see them one way, and then you start to get to know them more and more, and you find out much more about them as a person, and it just feels more, just the whole transition, everything just feels very real. And that's why I kind of wait, and I be patient, and I know, it's coming. They're going to develop more usually, and they of course have, very much so. So every season I've really loved and enjoyed just watching each one of the characters kind of not only come into their own, but learning more and more about them, realizing that you can appreciate each one of these guys for their own individual stories, and recognizing how important they are to each other, to the whole story, and to the series in general.
One of the things I like too is how they can leave you little breadcrumbs along the way as they're developing the characters, where you get glimpses of them, in the future or in the past, and you see how things connect, or you get to watch their journey from point A to point B in a certain situation. Again, I have to applaud the creative team behind the show for laying everything out and mapping it out so well. But that's one of my favorite things, is to see, okay, so we see the big three, 30 years further down the road or so, and when Rebecca is kind of in her last moments. How do they get there? We can still find that out even, now we're in season 5, I think, is airing right now. Yeah. And there's still questions. But I'm not annoyed that they haven't answered them yet. I'm anxious. I want to learn more. They keep me coming back.
I'm actually a little bit anxious when we get there. I know when we're getting to approach it, I'm going to get very anxious because I know. And usually when you're less anxious, but that's coming. In addition to that, I also really want to give kudos to the actors, especially the ones playing themselves in multiple generations, because they do that flawlessly, as well as playing the character changes in such nuanced and believable ways. I don't think there's a character who's made a leap that I haven't been right with them. It has always seemed measured and appropriate and like a person would be, not cliched. Mm-hmm. Whether it's been a positive or a negative change.
Yeah, and I was going to kind of piggyback on both of the Kristens, and the way that they do leave those breadcrumbs, I think it's just incredible. But then, we do still have that anxiety of how are we going to get to this end point? It was kind of the same with knowing that Jack was dead. It was how do we get here? They give you just enough of a taste of it that it doesn't annoy me that we already know what the end point's going to be. It just makes me so much more excited to see how we're going to get there.
Except there's still some things from the beginning that we were kind of teased with, and I still don't know, and that's literally still kind of driving me a little bit crazy with the whole thing with Toby in bed without Kate, and I still don't know what in the world's going on there, and I want to know.
I actually thought they were going to see Kate. I really thought they were all... Yeah. I really did. When he was I don't know how she's going to be and how she's going to act, I was oh, wow, Kate finally hit, a crisis or something. Or, she really wanted to, finally lose weight. There were so many things. This show has me do, I say 2 words with the show a lot. What? Oh, okay. Those are, my 2 words I use with this show.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So we've discussed a lot of things. I mean, I agree with a lot of what's been said, and I don't need to reiterate. I think the number one pro for this show for me is the idea that it keeps you guessing, but not in a way like a mystery occurs where it's a whodunit or how did they do it or that kind of thing. It's more of a where did the road start and where does it finish, because we're clearly picking it up at a fork, or we're clearly picking it up at a signpost. And you need the show to both backtrack and go forward at the same time, which is a very unusual watching experience. I mean, I think other shows have tried to do the flash forward, flash back, flash sideways, Lost, anything like that to tell you the story, but I don't think any other show has done it as intricately or as seamlessly as This Is Us does. And I think that is true of season 3, and I know some people right now are thinking of the present season and maybe even season 4. Try to pull that from Gummy out of your brain a little bit. But let's talk about, so there's some huge plot lines that have a lot of specific details, but I'm going to go by couple. And I'm actually going to start with the kids, the big 3, because I think they are probably the biggest chunks. Jack and Rebecca have their own stories both together and separately this season, but in some ways they play supporting roles to Kevin, Kate, and Randall, which is a little bit different from the season 1, season 2 pairing. So I want to say there's almost a slight shift in the way the story unfolds in season 3, because now we're finding out the pieces much more through the adult Pearson children than we ever have before. I'm going to start with Kevin. Eddie brought up Kevin, and I want to agree that Kevin, for me, even though I love me some Justin Hartley, hashtag Smallville, Green Arrow, praise, and also on Revenge, and he's just a very dreamy guy. He's just, Justin, if you're listening, tweet at CPU Podcast. Hi, this is Kylie. I love you. Anyway, all this being said, he was not my favorite when this show first started, and he was probably one of my least favorite characters. But the show just adds depth to the character this season, particularly exponentially, and I think you hit on why. He starts to actually break through the walls of his grief and a momentum that started in season 2, enough for him to be able to reason through and connect with the memory of his father, which I think he really was repressing as a grief tactic. I think that's one of the things the show does very well, is look at how the 3 adult children have processed their grief, or not, in Kevin's case, for some years. And the way Kevin decides to do this is by flying to Vietnam with his new girlfriend, Beth's cousin Zoe, so we can react to Zoe, but he travels to Vietnam to basically find out what happened to his dad. We learn about the vet that wrote him a letter that he kind of got wounded in the war, and Jack saved his life and got him to go home on some sort of medical discharge. And Kevin picks up these seeds, these tendrils of stuff, and decides to go try to find the story that he didn't know about Jack, because of course Jack never talked about the war. And there's a huge revelation that comes out of this Vietnam story. That's why I'm starting with it, which is we find out that Jack's little brother Nicky, who he followed to Vietnam to try to protect him because he was drafted, and he was exactly the kind of 19-year-old that probably should not have been drafted in the late 60s. He's still alive when everybody thought he had died in the war. And he's played in his younger version by Michael Angerano. If you're a Will and Grace fan, what up? That's Jack's son, all grown up. He was also in Sky High, if you like your nerdy movies. And then as an older individual...
And Seabiscuit?
Oh, yeah, Seabiscuit.
He was in Seabiscuit? I loved that movie when I was younger.
Now you see where Emily and where
That's one of the only
gravitate to. That's what I'm saying.
That's one of the only... It's one of the only Tobey Maguire movies I really genuinely like.
Aww,
Come on, Spider-Man, let's go.
Spider-Man's good. Spider-Man's fine, but Seabiscuit, I think, was one of his best roles.
Okay, well, anyway, he played younger Nicky, and then the older Nicky, who they find later, is played by Griffin Dunn, who's a veteran character
and
actor.
is phenomenal as older Nicky.
So let's talk about this storyline.
What a phenomenal surprise this was.
I remember my jaw was on the floor. I was just like, yep, mind blown.
I was super excited.
Yep.
I felt it coming about 2 episodes away. I was like, I bet you Nicky's alive.
I was with you,
Yeah.
I didn't think he was alive, but I was like, something big's about to happen, and that's about as big as I could go, is that he was still alive.
For me, when I'm watching a TV show, I tend to not think ahead a ton. I am like super in the moment watching a TV show, so like big things like this just
You were easily
they're
led
just
into
so
it.
cool. It's the best.
I'm with you, Emily, there. That's how I felt about this moment. And it was just, yeah, I was so excited.
I love it.
I'm with Eddie. I knew something was coming, but I did not catch it before it happened.
My wife and I love getting little bits and pieces, and then as soon as she gets something, or as soon as I get something, we're like, I think I know what it is. And whether I'm wrong or not, I love the fact that I get something. I love the fact that often I'm right, but sometimes I'm wrong. But just the idea that I can put pieces together before they surprise me.
I always think that it would be really fun to be in some of the read-throughs when the cast gets the script for the first time. And some of these moments, I feel like this would be one that just the reaction in the room would be deafening and it would be beautiful, and I want to be there someday.
Again,
I'm kind of hoping that once the series is over that we'll get some of those, like that some of this stuff will have been recorded and it'll be like the extras on the DVD release of it or something, because I'm sure there have just been some beautiful moments in those table reads.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing. That would be worth buying a box set for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They did that with Fuller House, and I saw some of them. They were great.
Jared is also on our Fuller House panel.
I am.
I really do hope you're not comparing Fuller House to This Is Us.
No. just the idea.
Spencer,
Although-
they're exactly the same.
Although I do love Fuller House. No, I was not comparing. It was just the idea that sitting around the table reading together, and
I'm joking,
they're
Jared.
special. I know. I get serious about it. So
You're messing with Jared's passion, Spencer.
it's okay. Mess with it, because passion you back.
Well, I wanted to mention this one first because even if I suspected it coming just a little bit, I think the moments that were breathtaking were all of the interactions that the characters subsequently had with the Nikki character. I think the revelation that he was alive was surprising, not shocking, but then living the shock through them is what made it shocking again. And
then adding that layer of finding out that Jack knew that Nikki was alive.
yes.
That was one of the first moments you started to feel any sort of doubt about Jack's character and the strength of it and the goodness of it. The fact that there's a moment where he decided that he had to cut Nikki out of his life and not let his family know about Nikki. That was shocking.
I think that's part of what was so shaking about it. Was just that it really shook up and messed with your perception of Jack. And Jack has always been such a strong and stable character up until that point that to see this moment of weakness or this moment of change in him, that it was just ruined that kind of perfect image that everybody had of Jack. Not that this makes him any less perfect necessarily, but it just kind of brought some more realness back to him, I think.
I think for me, it was Jack staying true to Jack. He's always protected his little brother, but now he has to protect his kids. And I don't think he wanted his kids to have the perception of what they would have had of their uncle. He wanted them to know what he was like through their father.
And all the analytical beauty that I love about analyzing these things and thinking about them, the reality of it, I love that. And this is a part of my personality and empathy, is that you knew and you could see how difficult it was for Jack to do that. And in reality, you knew he probably didn't want to play it out that way. He did to take care of his family. But I love how that personality of his, that the struggle that he had with that, it's Justin kind of took that on from him and continued, and the strength of family, which Jack was really big into, that has a chance to bring them back together, and that Kevin wants to help kind of continue the work that his dad did, and everything that his dad wanted to teach him is still happening even with him being gone. And I just love how it's kind of playing out, and how Nikki gets to be brought back in love and in strength to the family, and they're not giving up on each other, and Kevin doesn't want to give up on him. Yeah, it's great.
Well, that's what I was going to say is you're right. This is kind of a moment of almost a flaw, a chink in kind of the image of Jack that we've had, but it's Kevin that turns around and redeems that chink right away, because it's Kevin acting like Jack in full circle that basically says, we got to take care of him. He's our uncle. He's in bad shape. He's Dad's brother. I don't want to lose him into the system, into his drug habit, because all of that stuff, that's kind of the heartbreaking thing, is he gets the hardships of Vietnam and being in that war, which they've done numerous TV shows and films about. They play out very, very well in a palpable way on This Is Us over the course of a few episodes. I'm curious to know from those who lived in that time what they thought of it, because I get recommended things like Platoon and China Beach and some of the stuff that's been on in the past that depicts these times. I thought they did a really good job in This Is Us of depicting those times, comparatively speaking. You find out that Nikki, turns to drugs basically to kill away all the horror and just being in a place he does not want to be, and that follows him for the rest of his life and guides his choices, and is eventually what leads to this kind of Jack cutting him off. And also there's money and different things that are playing into that and their history. And I think that that's one of the most beautiful moments of the season, and particularly one where I cried a lot, is when Kevin basically fights for Nikki and mobilizes the family to kind of help him, and then it flashes forward in that season finale, and he's part of the tapestry at that point.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that to me was a very key moment in this season, is when you get that flash forward to the end, and Nikki's right there as part of the family, and that was just so heartwarming.
Well, I think the interesting thing about Nikki, though, too, and having Kevin be so involved with that storyline is the full circle of it, though, too, is that now Kevin's stepping in to save Nikki like he wasn't there to save Jack. So it's kind of that whole full circle, and that is just another example of some of the brilliant writing in this show and how planned out and thought out that they've been. And I think that if they hadn't been that way and they were kind of just flying by the seat of their pants as the seasons are renewed, we wouldn't be sitting here raving about the writing like we are now.
I think the Nikki and Kevin interaction is when Kevin realized he was just like his father. And Nikki even says, you guys are just you're consistent like your father. And I think that's when it slaps Kevin in the face where he goes, wow, he is my dad. That I cried when Nikki said that, actually.
That whole episode was full of the tears. I cried for at least 20 minutes afterwards. So that's that piece, although no one talked about Zoe.
I think Zoe was Kevin's breakdown of, I need to stop loving people and forcing them to love me, and I need to love myself. I think that's all that Zoe was there for, is to show Kevin that he's hurting people and he needs to start loving himself. Even though Zoe's gorgeous, I thought she's beautiful.
She is. I will say that if there is anything to this show that I would criticize, it was her character development.
I agree.
To me, she felt like a plot device.
Agreed.
And that's one of the few times I've felt that in the 3 seasons up to the point that we're talking about, that there was somebody written as a device rather than as a well-rounded out character. Although her character did have a rounded out element to her. I mean, she was what we were told she was, but yeah, she was there to progress one of the main characters.
Yeah, and I think
it almost makes me wonder if she is going to pop up later on, because they keep doing some of that stuff of okay, we're going to bring back a piece from season 1, season 2. So it almost makes me wonder if maybe we'll get something, but I would agree that she definitely felt very much like a plot device.
Well, and I was going to echo Spencer that they did more tell and not show with her, and that's really why it felt... I just felt like I needed to know more, and we did get the one flashback with Beth and Zoe, but it was more about Beth and her relationship to her mom. P.S. guest star Felicia Rashad, Mrs. Cosby, okay.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. So I think that I was left wanting more, and I didn't feel the chemistry or the attraction between Kevin and Zoe as much as, say, Kevin and whatever her name was, Sophie, played by Alexandra Breckenridge.
Well, Sophie and Kevin had like a long history though. Like
but they had a child and a teen and an adult Sophie, whereas Zoe was just Zoe, and all we knew was that Beth kept saying she was kind of a hot mess who will hurt your feelings, and then we also learned she had some abuse in her past. That was like the two main points.
I love when Beth said you can't take two hot messes and put them together.
She's right.
That's a wonderful commentary.
Yes. Yes.
I appreciate Beth. She's still one of my favorite characters.
Same.
Yep. Mm-hmm. She needs to have a hotline so you can like call her and be like, should I do this?
Absolutely. That is a great idea.
NBC, get on that. Susan Kelechi Watson, pay her for some hotlining.
Right.
But only she gets to do it in character, so.
Speaking of in character, segue. Let's go over to Randall and Beth's side of the triangle of Pearsons. So in this season, we have a very interesting dichotomy in that household because Randall is full on bidding to be city councilman in Philadelphia, I believe, where his father was living, and Beth, unfortunately, gets let go at her job after some time, and we find out, especially over the course of the season and through the appearance of Mrs. Cosby, that she always wanted to be a dancer and was a highly trained dancer and was not pursuing her dream career, but one that her mom kind of heavily twisted her arm into acquiring when her dance dreams didn't quite materialize. And it's kind of an updated, age-old argument between Randall and Beth, who gets to pursue their dream, on top of the fact that they have two biological children in Tess and Annie, one who is coming to terms with her sexuality, and then a third child who they adopted from the foster care system, in Deja. So what did we think about that?
Deja is an extremely interesting character.
I love Deja.
The little bits of, and they do this with all the characters, the little bits of parallels between her and Randall and where she's come from and where Randall's come from. Just, again, really great storytelling.
I feel like they've set those two up as foils against each other, and you really see a lot of that in this season, and those were some of my favorite moments and scenes, were some of the Deja Randall scenes. And I like it. I like that that's something that is continued. I feel like the tension but love between them is very, very interesting.
I feel like Deja makes Randall feel like his father. Because Randall is very, very close with his mother. And he never felt that connection with Jack like the other two did. And I feel like Deja is like pushing away from Randall like he did his father. And so I think it's Randall trying to be like, well, this is what I did to my father, so I'm going to keep pushing you and pushing you and pushing you so that you don't push me away, and all it does is push her away. Where secretly, they both wanted it. Randall wanted it, and Deja wants it as well.
I think some of my favorite Randall moments, though, are when he does stop and realize this is what I'm doing and these are the consequences to my actions, and he changes the behavior. He doesn't back down from pushing that relationship, but he backtracks and he's like, okay, I need to back off and do this a different way. We see a lot more of it later on too, and I think that those are some of his really beautiful moments.
And consistently, he will go full force and then kind of a full-on stop or a full-on just a minute, take stock of this, apologize usually, and just have those sentimental, loving moments where you recognize your humanity and you just try to then think where somebody else is coming from. I think he does a great job wrapping it up, where there's always these learning and growing moments. And then Deja, in turn, comes back and says, maybe you were right, or maybe I can see your point a little bit clearer now.
I think part of Randall's kind of backtracking and an ability to step in and say, okay, this is this situation from the other perspective. At least this is what I hope it is that it has to do with his anxiety. I know that I do that with my anxiety. I tend to go full force for a while and then step back and realize, oh, this is where I was wrong. And I think I'm hoping that that's kind of how they're writing it and playing it off.
I think it is. I think very much in this season, the story kind of centers in a real way, again, on sort of the mental health aspects, only this time it isn't just Randall, it's how it affects Beth and how it affects the kids. And actually one of my favorite moments, or a couple of my favorite moments of this season are bookended in this season, where we are reminded, or maybe it even happens at the beginning of this season, that, Randall kind of takes Deja to where he found his dad, William, and all that stuff. And at a point where Randall and Beth are at a very tense place, he's sleeping on the couch, things are not going well because he's trying to pursue one thing and she's trying to pursue the other, and her position is, why do I have to sacrifice mine? I've been sacrificing for you. Where do you sacrifice for me? Which is all, that's all a very real discussion that I think a lot of couples have. But it plays out in a very real way, in a very heavy way in this show. But then Deja drags Randall to wherever she drags him to and says, Beth is great. She loves you. You love her. Don't lose her, And then kind of parallels it to her own being brought up and how she had to struggle through her several foster parents, and kind of bring it back around to I want to be here with both of you. And it just, I don't know, good writing. And the actress who plays Deja is really, really talented. She's going places.
I love her. I love that Deja's she almost kind of becomes a glue to that family, that chunk, because she is so wise beyond her years, and she's just enough removed from the situation that she can kind of see things from the outside perspective. And I think she really helps mend Beth and Randall's relationship a lot. And I love her relationship with Tess and Annie. I think she just really becomes a central part of that family because of her maturity and because of her unique perspective.
Truly was that missing element that the family needed, because I don't want to say Tess and, they're still young, but I don't want to say that Tess and Annie are like the perfect kids, but Beth and Randall have made them perceived as that they were the perfect kids, and everything was cookie cutter with their family, and I feel like Deja gives them that challenge that they wanted and that they needed. And it challenges Randall. And I love that aspect about Deja. And I think like her character knows that she gives Randall what he needs. And that's why I don't think she's pushing herself as hard as she could be pushing herself, because she's trying to give Randall what he needs as well.
Certainly Deja has a strong, actually she may be the only reason, but certainly she has a strong part in bringing Randall back to his father's neighborhood and being able to connect him with this community that he then realizes he's not the same as them, or he was reminded that he's not the same as them in some ways, but that he gets an opportunity to go back, to connect with them, to help them, to advocate for them. And it's a beautiful thing, just how, even though he didn't grow up there, Deja helped to bring him back kind of to that community, and what he gets to do for them is and what he chooses to do because of a lot to do with this just makes it beautiful.
I anticipated the line when he gets the call on election night and he turns to Beth and there's this pregnant pause and she says, "What is it?" And I said, "I won." And then he says, "I won." I knew that was going to happen because I thought that even though in some ways it felt a little on the nose, this conversation, I still enjoyed Randall's journey trying to grapple with his own biological and his original biological parents, his community, as well as growing up with a white family. I think this show handles that so well, and Sterling K. Brown is so good, and the whole city council conversation, the campaign manager and him trying to put Beth in the campaign, but she's butting heads with the campaign manager, and where does she support and not support, and the politics of it. we're talking about parallels. The whole idea of Randall's facade with the politics was very much a parallel for what they were trying to convey from their family outward. And it's very, very clever how they did that.
I really like the way that they just handled the idea of that politician who's been there for so long and nobody's ever going to be able to challenge and beat him, and the way that they showed that that's not right and we need to change that in our own society without being preachy about it.
P.S. That guy played Turk in the Marvel's Defender series.
That's
What?
right, he did.
We cover those shows too. Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Iron Fist. Recommended.
This season was the one where we were definitely fearing at some points that we might see the end of Randall and Beth as we knew it.
Don't remind me.
Yeah, they really led us to believe that Randall and Beth had broken. I mean, even with the flash forwards, and it was...
Yeah. Scary.
Yeah, it was. You can't break the soul of this show. Do not break the soul of this show.
So much that they had Sterling, I don't know if he did it or they asked him to, but Sterling K. Brown at one point put out on social media, this is not the end of Randall and Beth, before we saw the finale where they're both present at the house with Rebecca, which was a huge sigh of relief for me, but I remember coming across that on social media because there have been such an uproar and people were so stressed out about this.
Well, they set it up the way that they did, and then you follow that whole plot line and you're like, you think that this pillar of that family, of the whole Pearson family, how can this couple that's seemingly so perfect and so right for each other, how are we going to watch this relationship crumble? And then we do watch the relationship crumble, but then it's like, nope, it's okay, everything's fine. Yeah. But it's just some of that brilliant writing. It's just so good.
Well, I
know I was really in pain for Beth after Randall won the election and he goes to the councilman's house for dinner and Beth is caught up and so she's late and he leaves her that voicemail.
The voicemail, yes.
Oh, the voicemail.
Oh my gosh.
And then she comes and she eats the purple cake and she's nice to the people. And the whole time I'm just inside, just crying for her.
Yes.
And she acts like she hasn't heard it until they left the house. And then he says something about, don't listen to your voicemail. And she said, I heard it. Or something on the
Yeah, you're in big trouble.
But you know what I love about that is it's the show trying to say that nothing is really perfect. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And there's always going to be things that challenge or pull the rug out from under you. And I love how Beth and Randall, I mean, they're strong when they're positive, but then that strength also comes out when they're not so positive together, and it feels like fireworks, but it doesn't feel like drama for the sake of drama. It feels natural to the characters' relationship as they've depicted it.
It's so authentic. It's just, you can imagine this relationship in real life. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like a caricature. It just is so authentic and real.
And Beth must be my age because she's all up with the tunes from the 90s. She likes the TLC. I highly approve.
Yeah, I love her.
I do say with Beth that a lot of times, like, a character like hers could become cliche because of her wit and her sarcasm, but there's never a hint of it. And it is always beautiful and well-timed and well-played.
I still can't believe she used the word shtick, as Kevin said. Shtick, when she was talking there. But yeah, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we need to prepare ourselves because a show that's this good, they're not worth their weight in salt if we don't get another shocker or two out there. And I can feel as I continue to watch, I can feel those senses heightened, and I have to be prepared for it because the show isn't good just because it's so perfect. The show is good because it's real, and because reality says everything doesn't wrap up in a perfect bow, and that's life. And we will move on, and we will go on, and things will be okay, and we will be together. And this is us.
Ha!
You did. That was beautiful.
credit.
They're proud of you, Jared. So
I tried.
That was a Randall speech.
That was kind of Randall-esque. Good job.
I feel like Randall sometimes overachieving, but I'm certainly nothing like him in the way by way of perfection.
Yes, his perfectionism makes me anxious, and I have a little bit of anxiety, but I don't have it like he does. But when I'm watching it, I'm just like, oh boy. I can feel myself breathing a little heavily, like, it's Randall, calm down. But we haven't talked about, so the other big piece of this triangle is Kate and Toby. And their entire journey this season is the fertility journey.
Spencer, you start. You gave it to me last time, now it's your turn.
All right.
So polite.
I will say that is one thing that I am starting to miss a little is early Toby was... So I don't want to use the phrase comic relief per se because it's not really... I just really enjoyed the wit of his character. And they seem to have killed that off a little bit, and I'm missing it.
I don't think they're killing it. I just don't think it's
depression.
there much. Because just when you think that this is serious, Toby comes back and you're like, oh, thank the Lord Jesus, we can laugh and I can stop crying. And I mean,
yeah.
I think he was pretty witty during the whole fertility, oh my God, I can't say, my goodness, fertility aspect. I just think he was trying to be serious so that Kate knew he was serious about it. But also, his way of dealing with things is being funny.
Yeah, and I like that character for that reason.
I think we're seeing another very real character, though, and I think it's something that Toby kind of lacked for a while there at the beginning. Not that I didn't like him. I've always loved Toby, but I think we didn't see enough of those really human moments from him, and so seeing him have all that these depression issues, like I have friends that are like this. I can tell when they've kind of fallen into that depression funk, and they're not their funny selves, and they're not doing the same things. And so I think it was really nice and kind of refreshing to see that from Toby and see that he really is a real person in there.
And remember, he was at that point because he had gone off his meds because of his low motility, because they thought that the meds were affecting his motility. And so all of this was intricately wrapped up into Kate trying to have a very risky pregnancy between age and weight and everything else, on top of the fact that Toby was struggling in that area as well. And then it caused such a dramatic backslide for him. So I agree with Emily. I think it kind of reminds me of Robin Williams' Toby. You know, sometimes the funniest, most happy-go-lucky people are hiding things. And I think that This Is Us is willing to peel back the curtain and use it with the Toby character.
I can see all of that.
That one still bothers me.
Yeah, well, it's...
Agreed. I know, that was a very real-life example. But it's very reminiscent to me. That's what I thought of when I was watching it.
Yeah, I've got a really close friend that's like that. I can tell when he's not necessarily not on his drugs, but I can tell when he's just really in a bad spot, and it's because I'm not getting emojis in texts, or I'm not getting any of that kind of fun, playful stuff. And so it's a very real thing, and it was really nice to see that depicted in that way on television, because I feel like typically when you see depression depicted in television, it's like, oh, I'm self-harming and I'm thinking about suicide and I'm just laying in bed all the time, and that's not really what depression is. Like, it's kind of some aspects of it, but to see that really beautifully acted and to see it just so much more real was really nice.
I would say they used Toby to show high-functioning anxiety in a way that hasn't ever been expressed.
Yeah.
There are so many people that deal with that in ways that they don't know how to connect with characters on TV because they're always happy. I really respect the writers for peeling back and actually showing a character that is dealing with high functioning anxiety while they're also dealing with somebody, their spouse is dealing with long-term depression. And they're also dealing with PTSD on top of it because they just lost a baby on top of it. So they're dealing with all these psychological issues, but they're still functioning and trying to function as a unit.
compounded with PTSD from when Jack died, because I don't think that any, but particularly Kate and Kevin, I don't think that any of the three kids really lose that trauma from the fire. But one of my favorite moments from this story is, spoiler if you're not caught up, she has the baby. She does have a son. They're able to have one viable fertilized egg, and they are able to have a viable pregnancy, and the pregnancy comes just premature, but he's able to survive with help. And one of my favorite moments is actually, so we've talked about how Kevin realizes how much he's like Jack. Kate has a moment where she realizes how much she's like Rebecca, and also how much Rebecca and all of her Rebecca-ness, which has always annoyed Kate and made Kate feel less than, actually turns out to be helpful and supportive. And that's when they're in the hospital and Rebecca's asking all the questions and taking all the notes, and Kate thinks it's Rebecca making her feel like a less than mother, only for her to have the instant recall on all the stuff that needs to happen when the baby starts to have trouble breathing. I just thought that was also brilliantly written, and Kate has this breakthrough, which Chrissy Metz portrays very beautifully on her face, and even in just sort of the subdued gesture she makes when she's kind of looking over the baby and talking with her mom. It's very, very sweet and wonderful how they did that. Everyone agrees. Okay.
That tends to be this panel.
It's true. Everybody feels the same. So just a couple other pieces, I think, that I want to bring up. The other so we've talked about how Jack and Rebecca kind of slide into a supporting place, although they do explore Rebecca and Miguel a little bit this season. So for the first time, we really learn how Rebecca and Miguel become a couple. And I think it's earlier in this season that Kevin flat out asks, so were you like having an affair with my mom before Jack died? And then you learn as the season progresses how they kind of naturally came together. Any thoughts on that?
I actually loved the moment that you realized that Miguel hadn't been trying to sneak with Rebecca behind Jack's back the whole time, because he was the one character I disliked and loathed from the beginning, because I always felt like they were painting it like he was always trying to have an affair with Rebecca, and then it turned out to be a very organic, very natural coming together that wasn't disrespectful to Jack in any way, and it was almost a complete redemption for the character of Miguel. And now I have a lot of sympathy for him whenever, the big three aren't really giving him the kind of respect I think he deserves.
I think watching first Rebecca and Jack's love story unfold in flashbacks was so beautiful. And then watching Rebecca and Miguel's story unfold was also beautiful, but in a totally different way. I loved seeing that and seeing, here's how they actually got together. And no, it wasn't, as Spencer said, kind of an illicit affair going on. But I'm really glad that they gave that airtime.
And I love that Toby, Miguel, and Beth can have their little thing, the three of them, recognizing that they understand the family from a different perspective, but they can stick together and realize that they can laugh at the family and at themselves all at the same time.
I just realized I called Felicia Rashad Mrs. Cosby like 3 times. It's Mrs. Huxtable.
Oh.
We knew what you meant.
Gotcha. Yeah. I know, but she's not married to Bill in real life, which is probably good right about now. So.
Married to Ahmad Rashad, from anybody who used to watch the NBA show in the 90s.
Yeah, Ahmad Rashad. I remember him. What happened to him? He's married to Felicia, but other than that.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're right.
You always know when you get Felicia Rashad or the doctor that I love. Their doctor when the kids were born.
Gerald McRaney.
Gerald McRaney. You know when you get those guys in there, you're going to get some beautiful moments and some strong moments. And it's interesting. Sometimes you see a character as one character, and then when you see them in another part, it's interesting, that dynamic. But she's a great actress.
We love Dr. K. He's definitely high up on our loved character list within this show.
I don't watch as much TV as most of the rest of the panel, and so a lot of times we're watching the show and Spencer will say, oh, so-and-so, he was in this, this, and this. He's a really good actor. Mm-hmm. And I don't know them as any other actor. And And I'll have no idea. And sometimes I just hope secretly that I don't ever see them in another role, because I want to see them in as I'm seeing them in This Is Us, because it just seems to be absolute perfection. And
that actually segues into something that I wanted to ask about, which maybe doesn't apply to you as much, Kristen T.
Happy to help.
Is that in this particular season, actually throughout all the seasons, really the only 2 characters or 3 characters that play themselves throughout the ages are Milo, Mandy, and John Huertas, who plays Jack, Rebecca, and Miguel. They're able to play their younger selves, their older selves, and their oldest selves all the way through. But the big 3 Pearsons and everybody else that might have through lines in other time periods are not cast with the same actor throughout the time periods. Normally that didn't bother me, except this season it took me out a little bit that Michael Angiorano was young Nicky and Griffin Dunne was older Nicky, because I knew them both. And I thought that Michael did such a... I don't know if you've... Clearly Emily and I have. I don't know if you've seen Michael in other things, but this was quite a stretch for him. Like, I've never seen him act in a role like this with such a gritty and kind of sad, despairing quality as this character. I have seen Griffin Dunne do that, but it almost took me out of it a couple of times when they went from past to whatever counts for present, because they were so, to me, recognizable that it was hard for me to make the jump, whereas I don't have that problem with other pairings, because maybe one half is recognizable but the other half is not as much. I don't know if anybody else experienced the same thing.
I didn't, because the younger kid, I actually don't recall seeing him before. Whereas Griffin I've seen in numerous things, and he's always been stellar. Mm-hmm. I found the casting in this, other than for you obviously with them being recognizable from other parts, I found the transition between the 2 and the likenesses that they managed to pull together very compelling.
I think the only thing that bothered me was that they had set this rule, this like unspoken rule within the show that they do kind of, the same actors will go between the different time periods. And so I think to have this character that's in that same group as Milo and Mandy and the guy that plays Miguel, John, to have him in that same age group, I was expecting him to play his older self. And so I think that's the only reason why it took me out a little bit. I don't have any issues with either of the actors. I think they're both phenomenal, but I think that was the only reason it kind of took me out a little bit, is because they had this kind of unspoken rule already established and then they broke it.
Maybe that's it. Maybe you've hit on what was bothering me in a better way, because I think that that's true. They were associated with the ones who are normally the same person, but they changed, and so it was a little harder for me. But I got over it. They're both fantastic. I love them both, but yeah.
And I just have to say that I have a few family members who were in the military and went to Vietnam. My Uncle Tommy actually reminds me quite a bit of Nicky, the way my Uncle Tommy is now. And even the way that they depicted them during Vietnam and just the military kind of a way, generally speaking. It's very real to what I know to be people that go through this process of life after the military and even during the military. So, very, very real. They depicted it very well.
Agreed. Well, we've covered a lot. I guess at this point, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to make sure we hit on from season 3, since we're catching up season by season?
I've been thinking today a little bit about that, and I think just kind of going back a little bit to the Kate and Toby thing with the IVF and all that kind of stuff and all the stuff she was going through. My wife and I had a bit of that at the beginning before we had our first child. What I was going to say about that is that when Kate first had been told that the doctor decided she wasn't going to help her with the IVF, and then she had the birthday party. And then she had that moment where she stopped around all of her friends, and that was a very important speech. It was brave. I wonder, as much as I personally, I'm the kind of person that it would be great if in real life, I was so comfortable, or we were so comfortable in saying, hey, I need a moment here. Let me just get this out there, and everybody can hear me, although everybody's personalities don't fit that way. But that moment when she did that, I thought it was great. I thought it was great that she was able to do that, and I thought it was telling for her the way she felt. But one thing in there that was interesting that I'm not sure how true to life it is the idea that this doctor said, no, I'm not going to help you, and then a while later called her back and said, I changed my mind. I'm sure it does happen, but generally speaking, I would hope that if a doctor is going to help somebody, that they're going to do everything at the beginning to try to help. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are opportunities where they come back and say I was wrong. I'm sure that they do. But it was interesting that she did call her back and say, I changed my mind. And she seemed so nice about it afterwards, where at the beginning, she was so pretty determined that this is not what I want to do for you.
This one kind of hits home for me, Jared, because I became a nurse to take care of patients. And when COVID hit, I could have just stayed at home and stayed where I was comfortable. But I decided that I became a nurse to nurse people, to take care of patients. And I went to New York, and I went to New Jersey, and I went to Pennsylvania, and I did what I needed to do. The doctor did the same thing. She didn't want to lose her patient, but she became a doctor, a fertility doctor, to give women the chance to have a baby. So I think she went back, thought of it, and said, this is why I went into this career, and she did it. I took it as like, that's real life. That is actually real life and realistic, that a lot of doctors, they want to lay it out first or to figure out if they really can do it. And then they ended up doing it. So. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for saying that. I really appreciate that. And I guess you're absolutely right. I'm sure that they do. Maybe I've just been a little soured. Here in Canada, although they have some of this free health care, there is a lot of a struggle where things are so regulated by the government that they don't have as much leeway to kind of this stuff. But you're absolutely right. So I certainly was not trying to be bad towards her. I just thought it was weird but absolutely they're human. And so thank you very much for what you do. And I agree with you.
I think the only maybe lack of realism or plausibility in that storyline was the fact that she was down to one viable zygote, and that one actually successfully attached and came to term. But that's also, to This Is Us's credit, it's realistic and it feels genuine, but it's still TV. It's still drama. It's still telling a story. It still tries to give wins. And I agree with Eddie. Doctors in real life, they do have to kind of lay out the risks. And I think what the show was really going for was there are so many risks in this particular situation. So even when you're saying it out loud, I mean, I got to imagine that when a doctor is saying it out loud, some doctors, if you're a Grey's Anatomy watcher, you know that those doctors are going to try it anyway. But if you're not, or if you're watching this, maybe it felt a little bit unusual on that account. But I agree with Eddie. That's how I took it. I think the doctor went back and thought better of it and thought, well, let's give it a try. If she wants to try, I'm going to try, but we're going to try it safely. So
I guess I was looking for a little bit more hesitancy from her, really. I mean, she just seemed so much like she had made up her mind. And to me, I feel like if I was presenting this to somebody, I'd be more like, well, I'm not really that sure. But of course, as a doctor, you want to come across as, this is what I know. This is what I know, so I'm making this decision accordingly, and not put in too much emotion into it. But for me, I would have a hard time not putting that emotion into it.
Yeah, if you want a dose of realism, they're supposed to be as emotionless as possible, unless they get sued.
which is sad in some ways.
Yeah. America, right? Woo! Well, Jared's in Canada, so we've pointed the pros and cons of both countries. Is there anything else that we want to cover from season 3? It was a good discussion.
Well, Toby and Kate named the baby Jack.
Yeah. I kind of knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, that one was one thing I did predict.
I definitely still cried, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm still really wanting to know what's happening with their kids. Like, that's still hanging over the kids. What's going to happen Where are the kids? Tell me more stories of this next generation.
Are you saying that for real, or at the end of season 3, this is how you felt?
I'm trying. So maybe I'm ahead of myself. I thought it was in this.
At the end of season 3, we see Kevin with a child, and we know that Jack is around somewhere.
Yeah, we've already seen future of Jack.
Yeah.
Becomes a successful recording artist. He's
Yeah,
married,
so-
he has a kid with Kevin in what we believe is going to be the last scene of the show overall. He has the boy with him when he comes back to the house, and my wife, I believe, said that he said, "Go find your sister," or "Where's your sister," or something like that. So there are little bits that you see throughout this season. Yes, it gets fleshed out as we go further, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what we're going to see. There's definitely a whole new generation behind them.
The season definitely ends with Rebecca in bed, Nikki at her bedside, and you see Randall, Kevin for a blip, and Beth. You do not see Kate and Toby.
You don't see Miguel either, do you?
I don't think you see Miguel.
You see Toby?
Do you see
You
Toby?
see Toby, but
Toby's there.
you don't see him there. You see him talking about going there, but you don't
Yeah.
actually see him there, do you?
Yeah.
Doesn't he come in at one point by himself and he says
I
that?
think he meets Beth in the kitchen.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right.
Yes, he does.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
correct.
But Toby's also not wearing his wedding ring.
That's
And-
true.
And don't we see Kevin's preteen son, or do we just hear him?
Oh, you
No,
see
we-
both the kids, the girl and the
Yep.
boy.
They run in, and Kevin has a wedding ring on.
And we do not, I have personally not met Kevin's possible spouse.
No, we haven't
and-
met him.
Yeah.
No, I don't think
And we haven't seen
now.
adult Kate.
I haven't seen adult
No,
Kate.
I have a
Older
suspicion with the Kate thing that it's because they said back when this show was originally cast and everything that it was an interesting thing in her contract, where part of her contract is that she will lose the weight going forward. And I think we may not have seen her at the end because she hasn't lost the weight yet to be able to be filmed.
I was wondering about that as well.
Kate. Weird. Really?
Wow.
Everybody's worrying that she died.
I don't know how I feel about that, if that's true.
Yeah, that's
it was
kind
part
of
of the
graphic.
character. It was part of the character development, where the character's going in the long run. But, I mean, that may have changed from
I would
what I
hope
read
so.
originally.
That's kind of I feel like that's kind of a crappy thing to put on an actress. Hey, we want your character to go in this direction, but guess what? You have to lose a bunch of weight. I think
Yeah,
that's
They've always
she's-
done that. Maybe it's been wrong, but they've done that for men and women old for years, right? It may
Yeah,
not be
but
right.
it's not like Renee Zellweger and Bridget Jones. Chrissy Metz would have a much longer trajectory.
Yeah, and I feel like there are other actors and actresses that have done that by choice. That
By
it
choice.
wasn't necessarily written into the script, or in the script it just said thin, and rather than staying the weight that they're at, they go and lose a bunch of weight. Like Joaquin Phoenix from the Joker. I
Tom
mean,
Hanks
I thought
in
he was
Castaway.
pretty. Yep.
Edward Norton in, was it the Lincoln lawyer?
Yeah.
Or what was it?
I haven't seen
I've
that.
So I
heard
think
certainly-
to put that stipulation on Chrissy Metz is kind of
I've cer-
crappy.
If it's true.
So I would hope
Some
it's
people-
not true.
Well, no, it is true. It is part of her contract. She came out in an interview and talked about it. I think around the time that this season or maybe season 2 was airing.
But it was in there before she was cast. It was, we're looking for a larger actress that is willing, as part of accepting the role, to get to this point by the end.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
And
And,
if you watch her, she has lost weight she's
Yeah.
lost weight since.
Mhm. And she's been positive about it too. She hasn't said that it's a negative thing about this job.
Okay.
That's because she's under contract or because she actually feels that way. You know, it's sometimes hard to tell with how contracts are written, but they're also expecting her to do it in a healthy way, which is also
Okay.
not expecting her to like go under the knife and get liposuction or bariatric surgery. It's nothing that extreme, but
She's not joining Biggest Loser anytime soon.
That would be some network cross promotion.
yeah.
It's on the same network, yeah.
I have nothing
So
to say.
I think that's why we didn't. I think that's probably the reason we didn't see her in that final scene yet, is because they couldn't film her in that scene yet.
That's deep.
I didn't think
Curious
about
and
it like that.
intrigued now for these remaining parts I haven't seen that everybody feels like they're hinting
he
around.
still should be
and I
wearing
hate
his
when I'm
wedding
not
ring
the one
unless
who
it
knows
doesn't fit him
things.
Maybe he lost it.
Oh, yeah. Well, even me, my ring is getting too tight, so either I have to resize it or take it off. So.
Wouldn't you be so angry if we just found out it was a continuity error? Wouldn't that be terrible? But this show doesn't do that, so I don't.
And they specifically showed his hand. It was like a specific camera shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the rules of film. You only show something if there's a reason to show it. They deliberately showed him not wearing his wedding ring.
But Toby does say that Jack's on his way.
That Jack's on his way, but not Kate.
But with somebody.
Well, we do know that Jack is not driving himself.
That's right.
He said somebody and somebody else are coming. He said Jack and somebody else. I don't know who else he said was coming. But he named
Jack is married in the future and has a kid of his own.
Mm-hmm. Spoiler. Some people don't know things.
At the end of season 3 yet.
Oops.
Some people take their rings off when they go to bed, though, too.
Thanks.
Still trying to figure this out.
Trying to save it. Thanks. All right. Is there anything else you want to say about season 3 of This Is Us that we haven't already covered? Oh, okay. So I'm going to ask this question because we're in the middle of a series, not near the end. Do you still recommend This Is Us, panel? You got to say
Not a
that.
show on television I could more highly recommend than This Is Us.
Absolutely. If you haven't started watching it, watch it now, right now. I mean, leave the podcast and go watch.
I mean, listen to the credits.
Okay, listen to the credits and then go watch.
2
And
more
then make
minutes.
sure you have lots of snacks because you're going to start binge watching.
And Kleenex.
And sign up for Patreon.
Don't jump in the middle.
www.patreon.com/couchpotatoesunite.
Indeed.
Well, I heard no non-recommending people. Some vigorously nodded. This is a podcast, but I'll just report that they vigorously nodded. And we still have more to catch up on because our next episode is going to talk about season 4. But before we get too far into that, I'm going to take this time to thank Kristen T. and Kristen L. and Emily and Jared and Eddie and Spencer for joining me once again to talk about This Is Us. This was us talking about This Is Us, so it's time for the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kels Rezmer. Kels played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole shebang was engineered by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us, give us stars, provide comments, or review us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon are just a few of the places you can find us, but we're also on YouTube. We have our website, and we're now on Patreon at patreon.com/couchpotatoesunite. If you really love us, pledge your support by becoming one of our United Couch Potatoes as we grow our little sofa-populated corner of the world. Otherwise, feel free to tell us how we're doing, what we should add, subtract, keep, or toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions for shows we might consider, contact us at our website where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, our Facebook, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, our Patreon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time, and always have new episodes coming down the pipe. Just listen to our intros. If you miss old episodes or want to know in general what shows we cover, just search for us. Find us wherever you do searchable things on the internet. Don't forget that exclamation point, or contact us via our website, our email, our social media accounts, and our Patreon to stay up on all the new events and episodes by our humble little podcast, Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point. Until the next time, all available seasons of This Is Us are available to stream on Hulu. In the meantime, our This Is Us panel will next reconvene very shortly, in fact, to talk season 4 of This Is Us and episode 4 of our 4-part catch-up series. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned!
Goodbye!
Bye.